Welcome back, everybody, to the Sitrep podcast. I am your host, Oriskany Jim, and today I am joined by my friend Piotr, sometimes known as Yavasa among the community. Mr. Piotr, how are you doing, sir?
Hello, everybody. I'm doing fine. I'm going to win a Panzer Leader game today, so that's great. I cannot wait for the endgame results, which are obvious from the very beginning.
That's true. They will be obvious. Oriskany is about to walk away with another stunning victory in Panzer Leader over the poor, hapless, and helpless Piotr. It's all good. It's all fine. But in all seriousness, what we're doing today is we're taking another look at Panzer Leader in the Desert War, during the Desert Campaign of World War II. What we're going to do today is one of the opening meeting engagements in what became known as the Battle of Gazala. When people talk about Rommel, this is what they're talking about. When people talk about, oh, Rommel, the Desert Fox, he kicked so much ass all up and down, North African desert. This is the battle they're talking about. Gazala is what really made Rommel famous, at least in the context of North Africa. He didn't deserve to win this battle. He basically tried something way too risky and somehow got away with it. He was just incredibly tough. His troops are just incredibly tough. Italians and Germans, that he walked away with an absolute stunning victory that wound up getting him promoted to Field Marshal. It got him sort of in that pantheon of like the greatest commanders that have ever lived. To be honest, he got lucky, to be perfectly frank. I don't know, Piotr, would you agree with that assessment roughly? Or?
Yes, of course. I agree. It was risky, but he, made the cut.
So here's a quick overview of what Gazala sort of looks like, at least in the beginning part. Of course, we have Rommel over here to the west, and he starts off with what is basically his one big move. He just kept doing it over and over and over again, and he kept getting away with it. It was this big, right swing around the British left wing, this open desert flank. Yeah, he wound up getting behind the British. The problem is the British were starting to get the hang of this, finally, and they had places like Bir Hakeim, the 150th Brigade box. You'll see here where the British commander, Auchinleck, is the overall commander, and then Ritchie commands 8th Army underneath him. Has like these fortified positions in a string. He can't set up like a World War I trench line, so he sets up these little boxes. Notice that the defense line is 360 degrees because they're getting ready to be encircled. The point is, if we hold on to these boxes, it's going to break up Rommel's encircling attempt. And sure enough, that's almost exactly what happens. Rommel swings so far to the south with all of his mobile forces, including his Italians that are mobile. He goes all the way around. This is hundreds of miles south into the desert. Then he's got to pivot all the way north again. And he tries to encircle too many of the British. And the British don't run away like they have in the past. So now his entire army, he put too much of his army, I feel, into this encircling movement. And it's a question of, are you behind the enemy or is the enemy behind you? When you put a certain percentage of your force behind the enemy and the enemy doesn't run away, are you really cutting them off or have they cut you off? It's like two men who have them each other in a headlock. And it's whoever passes out first. And again, it came right down to the wire. You've got Free French guys down here at Bir Hakeim. You've got Palestinian volunteers at Bir El Hamad. You've got the 150th Brigade of the 150th Brigade box. These guys did not give up. These guys down here, these Free French at Bir Hakeim, held on for like 2 weeks. And it just turned into a meat grinder where the Germans barely won out. Like I said, those two wrestlers who have each other in a headlock, the Germans finally won out by like 1%. That was a 51 to 49% kind of a thing. Of course, once it cracked, then it turned into another huge retreat. And that's when Gazala becomes one of the most famous victories in the history of armored warfare. And again, he got away with it. But what we're doing today is one of the meeting engagements as the Germans are just starting this huge swing down here to the south. And we are looking at 15th Panzer Division, leading elements thereof, namely 1st Battalion, 8th Panzer Regiment. And they're running across four elements of 4th Brigade, 7th British Armored Division, the Desert Rats. And we're going to meet down here at 0830 hours on 27 May 1942. It's a very simple scenario, as you see here. It's all tanks. Again, this is the meeting engagement. This is one of the few times you're ever going to see tanks fighting tanks, and that's pretty much all. That's not usually how war works. It's usually infantry getting overrun by tanks or anti-tank guns or some kind of combined arms thing. Very rarely do tanks just joust out in the middle of an open field, but it's sure going to happen here. So, Piotr, is there any questions, or do you want to add anything about our discussion of Gazala, or?
Well, not really. It's not the first time I'm going to play the British, yeah. So, that's cool.
You say play the British, but they're all American tanks. This is the first big time not the first time we see Honeys. Honeys did fight a great deal in Operation Crusader. We talked about November of 41. But I'm pretty sure this is the first time we see big use of the Grant. The M3, which used to be the Lee, and then the British saw it. They took it, they loved it, because it was better than the tanks they had, as tragically bad as the Grant, as the Lee was. They did take off that top turret, that top commander's cupola on top, which was kind of pointless, reduced the absurd height of the tank by about 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet, and they renamed it the Grant. So they made it a little bit better. But the British love this thing, because it always started, unlike British tanks, didn't break down, unlike British tanks, and it had a 75mm gun, unlike British tanks. Granted, it was mounted in the hull in this weird kind of right-hand sponson, but it was bigger than any tank gun that the British had at the time. And of course, the British renamed the M3 cavalry tank the Stuart, or it was named the Stuart, they renamed it the Honey. It was super fast, it had a longer range 37mm gun, but they didn't have 6-pounders in tanks yet, they were still using 2-pounders. And it definitely had a longer range than the 2-pounder, maybe even the 6-pounder. Although it did not hit as hard. Mostly its reliability. The Germans, meanwhile, have the old reliables. The Mark IV-E, this is the short-barreled 75mm gun. The Mark III-G, this is not the Mark III Special, which is in the North African desert in extremely limited numbers, and not with this unit at the time. I think there's a grand total of, I think you said 3 tanks total, research?
I found some data that's saying that there were 3 Mark Js in the desert.
Yeah, my guy Pat Stordo in his Desert Command, he gives 21st Panzer Division 2 counters, which would be roughly 10, but definitely no more than 10. Maybe 5, maybe 3, I don't know, but nowhere near a huge force. Guys, people watching this video do remember these are platoons of 5. So when you see a 3, what that really means is 15 tanks. 3 platoons of 5 in our battle. So the entire force of Mark III Js, the famous Mark III Special, Rommel's favorite tank, that is kind of very, very low numbers, and not with this division. This is 1st Battalion, 8th Panzer Regiment, 15th Panzer Division. Panzer Division, not Panther Division. That would be nice. Can I have some Panthers, Piotr?
Maybe KV-1s.
Some KV-1s. I tell you what, if I give you some KV-1s, I'll take some Panthers. No, it will completely destroy the historical integrity of the game. But that's why you only see Mark III Gs here. These are the shorter barreled 5cm guns. And of course, we still have some Mark IIs running around because they still have them and they have to use them because they're desperately short on tanks. The victory conditions are all laid out, and here is our map. The Germans are going to be coming in from, generally speaking, down here in the southwest, and the British are coming in here from the northeast. Again, referring to our background sheet, that little tiny green rectangle, that's kind of our map sheet. So you can see we're 4th of the 7th, and you can see we're 8th of the 15th, are sort of approaching from opposite corners there. These are the objectives, and where the roads lead. This is in the middle of nowhere. As you can see on that background map. So the wadis, the sinkholes, or the quicksand, the swampy areas, the trees, and even the roads. I probably put, if anything, too much terrain on this map. But I can't have the map be that boring. It would be the world's most boring, stream. But we have some dunes. There's no elevation. There isn't a single building on this map. And again, I was probably way too liberal with the trees. They're on there basically just for color. Yeah, this is literally, roll for Jawas, roll for Arrakis sandworms. You are in the middle of nowhere as far as, where this battle actually takes place. So, unless there's any more questions from you, Piotr, or any more commentary, we're going to go ahead and get started with turn 1.
Yes, we can.
Alright, so here we are at the end of turn 1. As you can see, my 1st Battalion, 8th Panzer Regiment, 15th Panzer Division has come in from the southwest. I've occupied 2 objective hexes. I couldn't quite reach the second objective hex with my main tanks, my Mark III Gs. So I just came on there with my Mark IIs, which are a little bit faster. took that hex, and left one sort of a garrison tank there, a platoon back there to make sure that I didn't get outflanked and have an objective hex stolen from me up the Bir Hakeim Road. And then we had your movement, Piotr. So, yeah, as you came in from the northeast, what was on your mind?
Well, I was trying to secure my tanks, first of all, and capture 3 objective hexes, but I was trying to take care and use of the terrain. So hide my tank behind the dunes and, lay low, using the hull down positions that the dunes give me.
Yeah, now these tanks, obviously for people who are watching this later, these opposing tank forces can see each other. Even though there is intervening terrain, the way Arab Israeli Wars terrain rules works, that's kind of 3rd edition Panzer Leader, you're able to see over dunes if you're adjacent to them. You're sort of hull down against the dune with your guns pointing over the top of it. You do get a big terrain bonus, but you are visible. So right now, these Mark III Js, these Mark II Fs that can only shoot 3 hexes are looking at about 30 enemy tanks that can totally hit him, but not vice versa. I'm afraid these Mark II Fs might be beating a hasty retreat in the new turn. And it looks like he's also trying to flank me a little bit over there on my left. What are these guys doing over here, Piotr?
Well, they are keeping your forces busy.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But seriously, he might be either trying to distract me, tie down some of my, maybe my rearmost company of Mark III Js, I wish they were 3Js, Mark III Gs, and again, threaten this objective hex here. Prevent me from mounting too much of a push against these other objective hexes up here. So we'll see what happens on turn 2. Okay, here we are at the end of turn 2, and we do have some shots fired, although no tanks are burning yet. So the Germans were moving first. Clearly, I saw that I had to reposition some stuff along my flanks, so I sort of started to reposition myself a little bit on the flanks here. Before they fired, my 2 platoons of Mark IVs did take a poke at these Grants. They were in range. However, those Mark IV Hs, of course, have low velocity L24 7.5 centimeter guns, hence the H-class attack factor there. I have to divide my firepower after a certain range. Long story short, I didn't do any damage. Those Grants then fired back as I pulled back on my center a little bit, because my center, as you remember, was bellied up right against this objective hex here, just so I could say I own the objective hex. I still own it. He has to come forward and take it and expose himself to my fire now instead of vice versa. But I did have to be a little cagey and fall back a little bit to put this dune between me and all these Grants and all these Stuarts who outrange me. So I was able to do that, hence prevent a slaughter up here along this dune line. And I tried to develop threats against both of his wings. Didn't really work down here because, in fact, he's about to outflank my outflanking maneuver. Up here, it did work, though, because he did pull back that stack of Stuarts that was sitting somewhere up here, right? It was like 0405, I think they were.
Yes, they were.
And then in his fire phase, those 2 Grants fired at one of my Mark III platoons down there. Did manage to disorder it. Hence it's at an angle. So no one's burning yet, but we have traded fire, and so far I'm a little bit on the worst end of it. So any thoughts from you, Piotr, about turn 2?
It was a fast one, actually. I saw your flanking maneuver down south, so I decided to put some Hannies down there. But I didn't want to sit with my Hannies in the west, because actually you're on the offensive. I have to defend, and I did take out some of your forces from the main group, and they are now sitting a little bit in the back. I keep saying so. That's why I'm playing the British. And now, hopefully, you will have to push, and I am clearly behind the dunes and waiting for your tanks to come to me.
Alright, so let's go ahead and see what happens in turn 3. Okay, here we are in the middle of German turn 3, everybody, and things, because I don't want to have a long, boring game, let's go for it. So I took my main body, I pretty much gave up my center. Swung my tanks around here through this little valley of death. I had one more company of Mark III Gs. He kind of snuck around this back. Took a little bit of lumps from these Stuarts down here. Long story short, I've pretty much swarmed. And what I'm hoping to do is slice adrift his entire left wing. shots. I don't know if I'm going to get away with it. So far, I've been lucky. I was very careful with my approaches, used some screen terrain as best I could, used range as best I could, and then to be perfectly honest, I just got lucky with some of Piotr's opportunity fire rolls. How many 6s did you have there? You had at least 2.
Yeah,
2 6s.
I believe there were 2 or 3.
Two 6s and a 5, or maybe 3 6s. Yeah, it was some bad rolling. I did lose 1 platoon of Mark IIs. I have a lot of other tanks that are disordered. They're not going to be able to help in this overrun attack, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to smash up 20 Stuarts. At least I hope so. We're going to see if this was worth it here, folks. So, this is where detail is killer. Not only in your approach to minimize the effects of enemy opportunity fire, but then also to make the most effective use out of your big smash. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 platoons of Mark III Gs that can help out with this. Because again, the disordered guys cannot take part. So it's going to be a grand total of 24 versus 8, 3 to 1, 4 to 1, subtract 2 from the die roll. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that. So 8 plus 8, these two. Again, this other guy cannot help. Whoa, I didn't mean to double them. And this guy, and also this guy. I have 8 and 8, and 8 is 24, 26, not that that really matters, versus 8, that gives me 3 to 1, overrun attack becomes 4 to 1, subtract 2 from the die roll. There is literally no dice roll required. If we look on the CRT here, 4 to 1, subtracting 2 from the die roll, even if I roll a 6, it gets read as a 4. That is 2 burning platoons of Stuarts. Okay, and then I have 1, 2, 3. Again, they're also smoked. Because that's 24 divided by 4, divided by 8, excuse me, is 3 to 1, becomes 4 to 1. There's no hold down shielding against that because I'm literally overrunning him. I'm in his hex. Likewise, before we turn the recording on, I was receiving no hold down shielding from his opportunity fire. I just got some bonus from Lady Luck.
For King and Country.
Yep, for King and Country and Lady Luck, who definitely was fluttering her eyelashes at me on that one, because that should have cost me a little bit more. I was actually doing the math in my head. I was expecting to lose 3 platoons of tanks. My one sinister plan was maybe I can sacrifice 2 platoons of Mark IIs that I don't really care about that much. If I could say, okay, I'll throw away 2 platoons of Mark IIs by offering them up as opportunity fire bait, and then 1 platoon of Mark IIIs, I might be able to take out 4 platoons of Stuarts, maybe. And it turns out I didn't lose any Mark IIs. I did lose 1 platoon of Mark IIIs, and that's it. So I lost 1 platoon for 4 platoons. I'll take that kind of exchange every day of the week and twice on Sunday. And that's going to be it for my turn, to be perfectly honest, because that's the end of my movement phase. I also kind of pulled back on my left wing here. I've still got my long-range Mark IVs back here to cover my objective hex. They kind of cover this one down here, so I don't know if I can reach it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, they can't even really reach it. So yeah, I kind of gave away my center there. But at the same time, I've smashed a big hole in his line. I now have 2 of his objective, or 1 of mine and 1 of his, now under threat. These guys can't shoot because they just got done shooting. These guys can't shoot on his turn because they just got done shooting. But Piotr, what do you think so far?
Yeah, you're doing really good. I don't know. We shall see.
It's only like I've been playing this game for 30 years. I don't have like any kind of advantage for it.
I should have seen it coming, but actually, I have a little plan. I don't know if it will work out, but we shall see what I can do.
Cool. All right, guys. We'll see what happens on the rest of turn 3 and going into turn 4.